Laura.
Yes.
Tell me what you're all about.
Okay, I am Laura Hoffman. I work at the Phillips Collection, and I manage teacher and digital programs and initiatives there, which is pretty broad.
Yeah, what does that mean?
Right now it means I'm putting together an exhibition for our gala of a year's worth of work where I've been working with teachers both in DC and working with teachers in Seattle because our exhibition traveled to Seattle.
Okay, cool.
And I've been training teachers on arts integration. So I work with teachers who are art teachers or teachers who have never done art before or have no art program within their school and are just interested in incorporating the arts more.
Yeah.
And, well, first of all, did you explain what your job is at?
So I run the Innovation Studio here at Carnegie Museums of Pittsburgh, which is 4 museums: the Carnegie Museum of Art, the Carnegie Museum of Natural History, the Andy Warhol Museum, and the Carnegie Science Center. So it's like, I always tell people, it's kind of like a mini Smithsonian, right? Like we have a pretty diverse set of institutions, and so the studio operates centrally, and we're the design, development, and now workflow laboratory for Carnegie Museums of Pittsburgh. So we do like kind of progressive, interactive experiences, but really a lot of our work recently has been on the analog side of things, looking at how we operate, the workflows that we use and don't use. We're in a weird situation because, we're 4 museums and we think there's a lot that can be leveraged across those 4 museums. But it takes a heightened level of communication and collaboration and to really realize that. So a lot of what we're doing now is playing in that space. And so we're doing the tech stuff, but we're also doing human-centered design processes across multiple institutions and that sort of thing. So it's actually quite fascinating work. Because, one museum can be daunting thinking about these things, but thinking about them across multiple institutions is
another level.
Is another level of dauntingness. But I think we're making some progress, and it's cool.
How did it get to be called the Innovation Studio?
So
because that seems really progressive.
Yeah, it was weird. So in talking with my now current boss about what this thing could be, we took a couple months to really plan like how this thing could work. So I didn't want to call it a lab. I didn't want to call it digital anything. And so we threw around some names, and I was like, well, artists use studios, so let's just use a studio. And then innovation got thrown on there, which probably looking back, we probably shouldn't call it the Innovation Studio. We're kind of just referring to it now as the studio. And so that's how it got named. We didn't want to pigeonhole ourselves into being digital. We didn't want the kind of extraneous connotation that comes with being a lab. We wanted what we're doing to be ingrained and integrated into the mothership in a way. And a lot of times when you think of something that's a lab, it's experimental, it's kind of fringe, which is all great, but not what we were really after. Would you consider yourself a digital native?
No, actually, which is funny because people looking at me always assume I am, but my friends who've known me since college think it's hilarious because I was such a Luddite and I really kind of fell into it and then realized I really loved it. But it was I definitely not inherent. It was definitely something I worked at and then just had no idea I had such a passion for it.
Yeah. Did you always like work in a museum, or like what's your formal background in education?
Yeah, so I graduated in college with an art degree, and then, also did art history and museum studies, and worked at different art museums, but I always was doing more education work, and again, no digital or very little. I might be pulled into a project here or there, but it really wasn't my focus at all. And then I went and moved to I was from Boston, and I moved to DC for grad school for museum education, and it's a great master's degree, but there's no focus on technology. That might change. That was a while ago. And then when I got my first job out of grad school, it was through my internship, which was through the education department at the National Museum of Women in the Arts. And I was hired they had just gotten a grant to redo their website. And so they had just a contract position to do project management of the website redesign. And I was like, oh, that's more organizational stuff. That is a strength of mine.
Yeah.
And I got that job, and then of course what happens is 6 months into the project, their true digital person left, and you do the math, you're like, oh, this is now going to fall onto my shoulders, and it did. And that, of course, that's when you're like, oh, well, now I need to know HTML, and it's the exact same thing as you. It's like, just Googled things, just started to look at it, and that's when I realized I thought coding was so scary. And of course the advanced work is, but it's a lot of logic work, which is part of my personality, but I had never really pulled out before.
Yeah.
Like I was so into the creativity and the art, but I also had a knack for the logic. So I actually really liked it, like the problem solving aspect. And from there, they kept me on and hired me in this new role as, a digital, I forget what it was, like digital engagement specialist or media specialist. And from there it grew because the museum was really starting over with all their digital work, and I started doing social media. I started doing online exhibitions. We grew a team. So it was a really great foundation.
Yeah, I kind of feel like I owe so much of my livelihood and career to like Google and lynda.com. Like, I feel like I learned more from both of those websites.
What about YouTube videos?
Oh my God, I know. Like, seriously. It's crazy. But, I feel like I learned way more that way than all of my kind of formal education, which, is in nothing related. Well, I guess it's somewhat related, but my background's in like strategic marketing and media relations. So I wanted to be a political strategist. Oh,
a little different.
A little bit different. Well, not really though. I apply a lot of
it's crazy,
those,
right?
Yeah. I wanted to be a political strategist, and then I did one internship, and I was like, fuck no, I'm not gonna do this. It was like the worst. What are your thoughts on MCM? Have you been?
Yeah, so, well, let me ask you, because I feel like yours will be very interesting.
Okay.
What was your first MCN experience like?
Oh, okay.
When was it?
Man, let me think. My first MCN experience was in 2012 in Seattle.
Okay.
And I was just coming back into the museum world after having left for a couple years.
Where did you go?
I went to academia, so I worked at a university here. I spent 5 years at a small museum here in Pittsburgh called the Mattress Factory, which was awesome.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And then I left for a couple years and realized I miss this. I miss being surrounded by culture and creativity. So I got a job here at a bigger museum. And so just coming back into the museum sector, I went to my first MCN in 2012, and it was in Seattle. And I remember like,
great place for a first conference, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Or first MCN conference.
Yeah, like Seattle's one of my favorite cities in the United States, actually.
Yeah, it's so great. And if you're into music.
Oh yeah, of course. Oh, and you know what? Talk about MCN memories. The first event I went to was the Ignite. And that was at the Experience Music Project.
Yes.
So like, and they had this Nirvana exhibit up. Like, it was such a really great first like dive in. I think I knew like some of the MCN community people from before, but it was really the first time I ever met Suze, who I do the podcast with, and it's just such a refreshing like time, it's such a refreshing way of doing a conference for me. I mean, just the fun. I remember like they had like this little maker space where they I think some creative technologists were doing like this pneumatic tube thing running, and so like we ended up doing shots out of the pneumatic tube the thing. It was crazy, but and so that hooked me, and then I've been back ever since, every year since. Now
MCN right now is going to be in your hometown, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So how are you feeling about that, and two, what's your involvement?
I'm stoked. I think I can't wait, actually. My involvement is I'm kind of helping out wherever they need help. So kind of heading up the local host committee, which everyone here in town is super excited about the conference coming here. So we have putting together some ideas for some tours. On the first day they do the excursion tours, and we have some cool ideas. This one quirky Pittsburgh tour is off the hook, with some cool stuff. Then we're also thinking about potentially doing some nothing's locked down yet, but some ideas that we have are kind of private sector tech tour, because we have a Google headquarters in town. Uber's here for better or for worse with their robot cars driving around.
Really?
Yeah, we have autonomous vehicles on the road.
Have you seen them?
Oh, they're everywhere. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. They're like everywhere you look in the metropolitan area. Yeah, it's wild. But it's going to be a great conference. I think it's going to have a cool Pittsburgh feel, very kind of blue collar, very kind of gritty, I think. And I think that fits MCN really well, because a lot of the topics and the discussions, they're real topics, right?
Yeah.
I mean, very little is sugar-coated at MCN. And so I think that'll be a nice backdrop for the conference. How about you?
So 2015 was my first year.
Okay.
I applied for a scholarship and was lucky enough to receive one. And I loved doing that because the scholarship gives you, totally free.
Yeah. Was that in Dallas?
Where was that?
Or Minneapolis?
It was in Minneapolis.
Okay,
yes,
cool.
It was in Minneapolis. And it was so great because it basically gave me free access to really explore the things that I was interested in. So I got, a free workshop, and I was like, should I take one that will really relate to exactly what I'm doing? I just chose one where I think I didn't even understand what the subject was, and I was like, when else can I do that? It was on computational photography and image mapping, and I loved it.
You got your photogrammetry on.
Yeah, and I didn't even know what that word was, and it just was so interesting and opened my mind up to things I didn't even know about, and I felt like that was what was so great about doing that as a scholarship. Of course you want to report back, and I did, but there were so many things I could just do and learn and absorb, and I felt like I had the freedom to do that.
Yeah.
And so I just really enjoyed the whole thing. I had been to Minneapolis before too, which was fun because I felt like I could do more things, I could experience. I didn't have to try and be tourist and do every single thing, which I definitely try and do when it's the first time in a city for myself.
Yeah.
And what I remember my other big takeaway was with MCN, because I'd been to a bunch of other conferences before, is I felt much more welcomed into the community right away.
Yeah, that's the big thing.
Which is hard, right? Like, I knew some people, but not a ton, but everyone was really friendly and eager to talk. And I just came back with a ton of energy and ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And so after that, they invited me to join for the next year the scholarship committee. I was like, oh, of course, that would be great.
Why do you think the community is that way? Because I mean, I've noticed that too, and it's the reason why like MCN is really like the only conference that I'm stoked and excited to go to. You know, other conferences that will remain nameless don't have that vibe, and you know, I've tried a lot to put my finger on what it is.
I think one, it's growing, right? Even from being there from 2015 to then 2016 to 2017, and being more on the other side of it, because I've kept up with doing the scholarship committee. And it's definitely growing, but it still feels pretty intimate. And I feel like there's this camaraderie of having the same sorts of challenges throughout, even globally, right? Like it's a pretty global conference, which I think is great. And it's just like, I feel like it's a time to both digest and absorb, but also a time to relax with your colleagues and just feel like, oh, I'm not alone in this.
Yeah.
And there's something so refreshing, right?
Yeah, it feels like, I don't know if like informal is the right word, but it feels like there's like, maybe, you know, there's zero pretense there, right? Like, so, I mean, it's even reflected in like just the vibe of the Ignite event and like karaoke and, you know, which I think adds a lot to it, especially when, you know, the community itself gathers and realizes that, you know, we're all working on the same problems, so that when you add that layer of informality across it really kind of translates into a tight-knit network of people who like each other and just want to get it done, right? Like, so, and
who want to do what I think is really cool is like really deep, meaningful work.
Yeah.
And as you said, like on the kind of the harder things, right? It's not glossing over, and it's really hard to sometimes take time during your workday to think about all those hard things and how to tackle these big challenges. And it always seems more like a forum where you can really get into it. And it never seems long enough.
Well, maybe we should talk to them about extending into like a 5-day conference. Right. MCN cruise would be awesome. Like, that
would be dangerous.
That would be great. Maybe we could get like a tropical like island cruise. I'll talk to Eric about that. Probably not, but
maybe MCN 100 or 75.
Oh man, I think. Will we both be in museums?
I don't know.
So have you ever gone to like karaoke?
I have gone to karaoke. I'm going to admit that karaoke is something that terrifies me. So it's not something I don't always go every year. It depends how I'm feeling. But if I don't, I'm always still doing something very social. It's just, you know, like singing in front of not only my friends, but strangers I couldn't think of a more terrifying thing.
What would be your go-to jam?
Oh gosh, I know it, but I'm like kind of embarrassed to say, because it's the only song that in college I have one friend. You always have one friend who can have you do the things you want to do least in life, right?
Yes.
So she always would get me with Backstreet Boys.
Oh, nice. Solid.
It's something about the easy lyrics and the
crowd
smooth
pleaser.
Dance moves. Right. It's
crowd
just,
pleaser.
It's easy. And what about you?
So I have a couple like go-tos that I pull out just because I know them. So I do a Bon Jovi, pretty good. Living on a Prayer.
Oh,
you know?
yes. Yeah, I'll talk about a crowd favorite.
Yeah, that's a good one because it gets, then it doesn't become just you up there, right? I mean,
which is important.
Yeah, the whole room is singing. But I tell you what, last year was the first year in New Orleans, was the first year that we went to a place and they had a Chromecast. So basically you could hook up somebody's phone and just rip off YouTube.
Nice.
So you could, like, the song selection was crazy. So last year I ended up duetting with Kier from SF MoMA on a Fugazi joint, and it was great. Me and Kier, I think I was Guy and he was Ian, and we
But you have a music background.
Yeah. But
so you have a very unfair advantage.
It's all just shouting, really, and that was a good one. So
because it's MCN 50, I might have to just suck it up and just do it.
Do it. Well, I think we're gonna try and go all out for karaoke. We've already been doing research.
Really?
Yeah.
So are you on the official karaoke committee?
Well, I've delegated that, and I hope everyone listening do you know Desi Gonzalez?
I don't.
From the Warhol. So Desi is digital engagement at the Warhol, close colleague of mine, and she has been doing extensive research. She actually did a Pittsburgh Karaoke Week event. This was last month, I think, where every night for a week they went to a different karaoke joint just to kind of like benchmark and make sure that the karaoke was going to be on point this year.
Wow.
So I think her full report is being submitted via the MCN Basecamp.
Yes.
Maybe not, but karaoke will be awesome this year for sure. So what do you think, like, the top issues facing, your museum or museums in general are right now? Like, what?
In general?
Yeah. Well, I kind of feel like, I don't know. I kind of feel like there are some big issues that we should really start tackling. Really being honest about. Whether they be, inclusion, or whether they be digital infrastructure, right? Like, sometimes these are things that don't get the most attention, right? Like, that, but really need to be elevated in the discussion. And I kind of feel like MCN is doing that, I think there are a lot of really meaningful, not super glitzy topics that are really getting the attention they deserve and the discussions they deserve through MCN, whether it be at the conference or whether it be like in the community on Twitter or whatever,
Yep. I do feel like, inclusion and accessibility are things that are coming up so much more. I mean, you really can't change the system if you're not providing the same opportunities to everyone.
Yeah.
And when people are looking for jobs, they only really want to see the same things that people can only get where they've had a certain way, a certain life path. And so I feel like organizations are realizing that, but the question is, are they going to put their money where their mouth is and really start investing in changing these systematic approaches, which aren't easy to fix,
Yeah.
But it's definitely something that I know my organization, we're talking a lot more. I don't really want to get into it super much in this podcast about politics, but I can say that I've had a lot more conversations on a peer-to-peer and institution-wide about just how, as a public institution, do you tackle these more politically focused events happening, which I haven't had to deal with as much beforehand.
Yeah, it's certainly an interesting time to be doing the work that we're doing, you know,
Right.
and doing the work that we're doing in the institutions.
Serving the public.
Yeah. I mean,
And wanting, I think museums are wanting to stay so relevant.
Yeah.
And not be seen as this old institution, but they also are not sure about where they stand when anything is contentious.
Right.
And that's something that's really hard to sort out.
Yeah. Well, it's a complicated network of stakeholders, right? I mean,
Right.
Yeah. So with that comes some soul searching, and I kind of feel like we're at the kind of like the tipping point for that, where it's like, all right, we're headed over. Okay, we're gonna have to really do this now. We're gonna have to like look inward, and so, which is good. I mean, it's good, right?
Yeah,
and
it is good,
it needs
but
to happen.
it doesn't make it easy.
No, not at all. Not at all. Not at all. Cool. So, you know, it's been really awesome getting to know you. Are you on Twitter or are you on
I
the
am.
internet? Okay. Cool.
My Twitter, you know, whenever, I don't know if this might be my background of not considering myself a true digital native, is I love social media and I do a ton of it for work, but I also find the more I do it for work, sometimes I forget about in my personal life.
Yeah.
So I feel like I see big lags. Like I'm always super active right around MCN time because I'm like, right, of course, I have this personal side of me too that wants to reach out.
Yeah.
So I am at LRHOF, so LR Hoff 15.
Cool.
How about yourself?
What's the 15?
Oh, it's just a number I've always liked.
Oh, wow. Why?
I really like multiples of 5. If
Okay.
I'm going to be it's a weird thing. And I think that relates to my liking logic, right? It's just
Yeah.
like super easy and uncomplicated number-wise.
Awesome. Yeah, I like social media too. I kind of feel like as well as like this work-life balance thing, and so I only do Twitter, really. I mean, I post some photos on Instagram, but not really. I have mental mental space for one social platform, so it's Twitter for me. And you know, it's really museum Twitter is pretty awesome.
Yes.
What's up, D Tulo? Museum Twitter is like, I kind of feel like it's MCN 365 days a year. So
Right.
like, if you kind of select the right
Like drinking
people,
about museums.
Yeah. So yeah, Twitter is where it's at. So
How can we follow you?
just my name, Jay Inscho. Yeah, at Twitter. It'll be in the show notes.
Oh, great. Great. Yeah. So I just started a public Instagram where it's more about art. And I've actually found I'm switching more a little bit from Twitter into Instagram because, you know, as it's just fun. You know, I'm in DC, so there's so much great art out there and it's fun to document. So
cool. All my Instagram is pictures of my kids. Right?
Well, that's great too.
Yeah. Not as nice as
Your
art in
own
DC.
form of art. And I have to say, I've never been to Pittsburgh before, so I'm very excited to not only meet you in person, but to see all these places that you've now made me really excited about.
Well, you know, Pittsburgh is really just a hop, skip, and a jump from DC, and don't wait until MCN. But you know, if you want a road trip up here in the summer, we can show you around, and likewise, I probably will be in DC, so I'll shoot you a note.
Great. Well, I'll definitely see you, if not before, in November.
Definitely. We'll see you at MCN.